Good morning, everybody. Welcome to MACMA's first Friday exchange, is what we are calling it. It is great to be with you all here. We've got a nice looking group here today. And when I looked at the registration list originally, it was about 50-50 with a slight lean towards media companies versus companies that are service type companies. So we'll see who all shows up this Friday. I know it is Good Friday. We're glad to have you all here. But I wanted to give some quick shout outs and some announcements here real fast. So I'm going to do that. First, I'd like to, even though he's behind the scenes, I'd like to shout out for Tim, taking care of the controls behind the scenes. I'd like to give a shout out to Jim, Nancy, and Lisa and Joyce for all the work they did to help put this thing together. So I wanted to make sure and shout those folks out. And then I would be remiss if I did not mention Cinco de Mayo, New York City, MACMA Industry Days. We're putting together, Bill champion the thing. He's putting together a great lineup of people with topics that should matter to all of us. Should be a lot of fun. I'd love to see you all there. We'll be reaching out for sure. You've probably already seen stuff. So, all right, well, here's how I'd like today to work. We're going to roll with the punches a little bit. First time ever. We're going to have a lot of smart people here today. So here's what I was thinking we would do. First off, we've got my special guests, Franko and Kosti Marko, on the scene. I'll give them bios here in a minute, but we've got them here today. They've both got some cool AI applications they're going to show us. And then we're going to give them a little time, people Q&A, if there's Q&A for those two gentlemen. And then afterwards, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go to get some wins, right? It's Friday. If you guys have some wins or something like cool to talk about today, right? So what I'd like to do, we can always do Q&A, additional Q&A, or bring up stuff at the end, but I'd like to hit some wins. So I went to my friend Claude for how to do this in case we had like 30 people show up and wanted to talk about wins. And what Claude suggested was that at the end, when it comes time, we'll have, like I said, we'll have Cam and Kosti go. But then when the time comes, I'm going to give you a code word. And what I'd like you to do is type your win into the chat. And what we'll do is when I give you the code word, that's when you hit enter. So type in any win or what you want to say. When I give you the code word, hit enter, and then the chat will fill up with all these wonderful wins or what have you want to talk about. And then what we'll do is we'll pick and choose those and we'll come off unmute to talk about those things. All right, so let's see how this goes. It's definitely free and loose, so we can also just chat, but let's see if we can keep it tight a little bit. So tight and loose at the same time. I don't know if that works, but anyway, all right. So first off, let's get ready to see what Cam has. So first off, bio for Cam. Cam Franko is an audience development and email marketing professional at PMMI Media Group, the media arm behind leading B2B packaging industry brands, including Packaging World, Pro Food, and the Pack Expo trade show portfolio. With a background spanning email campaign strategy, content marketing, video production, and marketing automation, Cam has developed hands-on expertise in reaching and re-engaging B2B audiences at scale. His work sits at the intersection of data, content, and technology, finding ways to make audience touchpoints more relevant, timely, and less reliant on manual effort. Most recently, Cam built a GA4-powered newsletter automation that dynamically surfaces top-performing content for unengaged and at-risk subscriber audiences, replacing a static, manually updated email workflow with a system that runs itself and adapts week to week. Ladies and gentlemen, Cam Franko. Cam, please take it away.
Thanks, Rick. First off, thanks to MACMA for asking me to be on this. This is exciting and fun. I'm just going to get right into it. So Rick kind of explained what it is to start out, but to give it a little more context, our tech stack here at PMMI is we use Omeda for our CDP, Parameter One's Mindful for our CRM, and then GA4 is part of this solution as well. So that's the three software things that we're working with to make this. The problem that I was setting out to solve with this was we used Odysseys, is what they're called in Omeda. I don't know what you guys use, but just an email automation for re-engagement efforts and soon to unengage people. Typically, we would have to go back and update those manually because we don't use dynamic content within Omeda. So we were trying to figure out our own way to solve that without to serve the audience relevant content that they want to engage with or try to get them to re-engage with without having to go back and manually write emails that go out every month or whatever to the audience. So what we ended up on was an automated newsletter system that uses GA4 data to dynamically surface the top three articles of the week from one of our brand sites. We use it on four brands right now. And then it deploys them to the re-engagement audiences and our soon to unengage audiences with no manual curation, just a review every Friday. This one goes out on Saturdays, which was also a new thing for us, just
Hmm,
something to try as you're always switching variables, especially with re-engagement.
hmm.
Uh, so basically, what happens is GA4 pulls the top three performing articles of that week based on traffic and engagement. Those get automatically populated into a newsletter template, and each article's headline becomes, or the top article's headline, the number one, becomes the subject line of the email. So it's just all automated. This helps a lot of the time for our audience. Our top performing stuff has big brand names in the headline, and that we found that that performs well in the subject line as well. So it's just kind of like a no-brainer. And it sends every Saturday at this point. It's weekly, and that's a higher frequency than we were doing it before. Um, so yeah, basically it's driven up. I look at our engagement in our database on like more of a macro scale. I mean, we look at like performance of emails as well, but I can tell you the line is it goes like this, but it's ended up trending up over time with this effort. So it's been nice. We have our whole database by brand averages between 70 to 70%, 75% engaged users. So we have a pretty good ratio of engaged to unengaged. So if we get like 1 or 2%, it's a huge win, honestly, because it's already such a high percentage. And the whole goal is just to get them to click through to the website from one of the articles. And I have an example here of, let me find it, what one looks like. It's very basic, it's very clean. Um, so yeah, plug in your brand there. It's this is all it is. It's very simple. Click
Very
through. We get a couple clicks a week or whatever. Sometimes 100, sometimes 10. You know how it is. But yeah, it's been pretty nice for us. And it's nice that I don't have to go back and update and manually think about these efforts. It's kind of just all solved for me through data. So
fantastic. Real quick question. How did you say the subject line incorporates these article titles?
yeah,
Did you
so
say?
for this one, I mean, it's a long subject. It's a long subject line, I guess, but for this one, yeah, this article, this number one would have been the subject line. And as you can see, like I was saying, Danone is right there. Company names work well for us, big companies for our audience.
Nice, nice, very
Yeah.
cool. So you've seen an uptick on it. And now this is fire and forget. I love the choice of Saturdays. That's an interesting and cool choice. Did you do any testing on that at all, or just
Well,
let it?
I mean, it's been going for only a couple months, and yeah, we probably would want to get like maybe 6 months of data before we decide on changing a day. I will say that our sending calendar is like pretty booked, as I'm sure all of yours are. Um, Even though it's an unengaged audience, so they have their own treatment. It's just like trying different things. So we thought it's like Saturday mornings,
Yeah,
and people open them. Uh, well, you know the issue with opens, but they click on it too.
right.
So that's good.
Very interesting. So what's next with it? You said give it a little 6 months to let it run, and then we've got a question from Mr. Levine in here. Uh, I'll read this question. Cam, how long
Sure.
would someone have to not be engaged to get this?
So our rules are if they have no email or site activity in the last 3 months, we consider them unengaged. Now, we also have the people who are soon to unengage that also are receiving this. They come in probably if they're at like that 2.5 month mark, we roll them in. I don't know for sure, but it's somewhere around there. Uh, and all we have to do is get them to the site basically
Yeah.
to get them re-engaged. We used to want to like consider opens on emails engagement, but it's we all know why that's not a good idea anymore. But as far as what's next, Rick, what you were asking me, um, I mean, what's next is to turn it into a sponsored product, ideally. If we can, like, we use our re-engagement audience as kind of a test sometimes. Like, if we can get those people to engage, we think it bodes well for the rest of our audience. So yeah, I mean, the goal is always we kind of have like an audience to product pipeline at our company. We use audience as a testing ground. If something works really well, then maybe we can end up selling it as a sponsored newsletter.
Love it. I love it. It's super cool. And I love the not having to intervene with it. We're getting some questions here. Charles Tanner, does the email and subject line have to be manually updated inside Odyssey? If not, how does it automatically update there?
No, so there's not even an Odyssey anymore. We don't even have an Odyssey for this. It's all just done with parameter. Parameter one is the one picking out all the content. Our CMS is picking out all the content using GA4. And that we've just set up I'm not the technical person who set this all up, but I can tell you that there's a connection between where we deploy the emails in Omeda and parameter one. And parameter one set that connection up where it's just auto-populating into an email. We get an email that says, like, review this, sign off on it, and as long as it's all good. The first couple, there were obviously some bugs or stuff not working out correctly, but once it was all ironed out, it is pretty set and forget, I would say.
So it's kind of like an API fed email or something very close to that.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, we got Robin Ray. You said you're sending this to the disengaged now, but have you considered sending it to engaged audiences to keep them engaged? Or is the concern too many emails, which I know on my side, I'm always
Yeah.
concerned.
Yeah. I mean, like I just said, that would be the beautiful end game for this is we are making money on it and also engaging the audience. However, the sending calendar for the engaged audience is already packed with
Yeah.
tons of other wonderful things. So it's just fighting for attention within our calendar as well as for fighting for their attention. We'll just see how it does, but that is a consideration.
The challenges of too many emails. It's will it ever stop? No, it will not. I think it's
No.
I love the 90 days too.
Yeah.
I had created a re-engagement efforts that started at 180, and I'm going to be revamping it to 90. So I love the 90. I think that's much more appropriate. You could argue 60. You could make some arguments for some different things in there, but again, they're already getting a lot of emails, and so you know. Anyway, very cool, Cam. Very, very cool. Any other questions for Cam?
I will say, like when I first started doing audience develop, like Rick said, I was a video producer for like 7 years. So I started working at Odd Dev like 3 years ago. When we were doing re-engagement stuff, it was like action required, confirm you still want to be with us or whatever. I think that this is more valuable and less like, I mean, I think there's still a place for that kind of stuff, but I just like the tone of this better. And just like, remember us, we have content that you like, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just a quick window into what we did. We had on the re-engagement thing that we put together, we had a survey that would, hey, are we doing okay for you? And nobody would fill it out. We'd actually have a few people fill it out and look
Yeah.
at the data. There was the survey, there was the what are we missing? It's you, and then we had the last chance, we're gonna remove you. It was basically a 3 email re-engagement
Yep.
series. Like this a lot more. It's content driven. Um, I think that's mine was okay and it did all right, but I like this, and I like I'm loving that 90-day thing. So nice. And
Mhm.
so, how long did it take you roughly to set that up?
Well, because of all the party, like it wasn't completely internal since we're working, we had to implement it through our CMS. So we're working with them and they have a whole ticket board with us. And then like ironing all the kinks out and everything, I would say it took like 3 or 4 months, probably. Just, it could have gone faster if we were like, I just think it's like we were already doing re-engagement stuff, so it wasn't a huge rush. But now that it's going, we like it a lot, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, fire and forget. You kind of gotta love that. So,
Hmm.
all right. Well, I think we're great stuff, Cam. Thank you very
Thanks.
much for showing that. The nice clean looking email too. All right, well let's warm up Kosti Marko. So Kosti, I've got your bio here. Kosti Marko, who I've worked with in the past. Kosti Marko treats audience growth like an engineering problem. Funnels, behavioral segmentation, and data pipelines, not just campaigns. For 6+ years in B2B media, he's scaled newsletters, slashed customer acquisition costs by 70%, and built the infrastructure that actually compounds growth. So, Kosti, welcome and nice to see you. And what are you going to show us today?
Hey, so one of the things I'm working on a lot is automating some stuff with Claude and thinking about like how to use it to do like really simple things that like would take an intern's time or take a junior associate's time. So one of the things that at AG Media we had to do was kind of like, hey, how many of our subscribers are C-suite executives, VPs and directors, right? It's a thing that everybody does. And so you're kind of doing some data cleaning lists, right? One of the things we always ran into an issue though was this idea that like you would have to like go in and actively manage that list. You would have to actually go in and actively like check, let's take one step back. The way you would typically build it is you would have like some like lookup table, right? So chief is misspelled, multiple times, or chief with a capital C, chief with a lowercase c, CEO, so on and so forth. And so one of the things that like I really did not enjoy doing was actually have to go in and cleaning that data for salespeople to be like, hey, 60% of our audience is C-suite executives, the other 40% are this, that, and the third. And so you know, again, I had to do it manually. And so one of the things I've been thinking about lately is how do I do this with Claude and how do I do this with some sort of AI to just do the categorization for me and then learn on top of that categorization. So one of the things I like put together, I'll share my screen here. And this is just one of the things, right? There's like a ton of other use cases here, right? Something I wrote about recently is having Claude be my like a company research agent, right? So yeah, so there's like a ton of stuff, and this like thought process will like kind of unlock like a ton of other things here. So, I have a list here, right? Here's all these things here, whoops. We have job titles, right? And we want to bucket these people into whatever job title they have. We could do companies as well. For this demo, I only have job set up. But you'll notice that like a lot of these are pretty like VP, software engineer, I don't really know where you would put that one. Who knows where you put growth hacker? What is that? Is head of product a CEO or VP or director? Each company is different. Each B2B media company is different. So like you have to bucket those differently. But this is just a framework in which to like help you kind of understand like actually writing down which job titles are your like initial customer profile. So it uses Claude in the background, all right? This is a tool that I'll give to everybody here. You can kind of use it. It does cost money. You do have to have a Claude API key. And I will say that I think I run this over 100 times through testing, through a couple of different things, and it's maybe cost me like $1 or two. So it's pretty cheap. I did this in a Google Sheet just to kind of illustrate a point. In reality, what you would want to do is kind of hook it up in your background, right? So have your database talk to some tech folk and just have them like, connect this to a database. But the way this kind of works is, we have this thing called title normalization rules, and we have an instructions for Claude to kind of follow. So one of the things that I've always hated is when people do this thing where they do, VP of marketing, right? Like that just makes like the lookup table or the regex or whatever sort of process you have like so much harder. And it's just easier for me to just clean that up and normalize it. So the instructions work very simply. Like, hey, this is what your job is, Claude. You're bucketing into these three into a certain set of groups. Only returns, very specific data points that I want. Don't return, pros or whatever else Claude returns sometimes. And then we bucket our scene. These are the examples of bucketing these job titles, right? So C-suite executives, a lot of this is pretty much like standard CEO, chief executive, blah, 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 right? You might have some stuff like partner at your own firm, principal at their own firm, executive director. These might change for your B2B company, this is just an example of kind of the way I've wanted to use something like this in the past. Same thing with VPs, directors, managers, and individual contributors. The reason why this is kind of important and kind of like interesting is that if it comes up to something that's unknown, where Claude is like, I don't really know what to do here. It just flags it as unknown, colors the cell yellow, and then me as the reviewer has to go back and be like, okay, here's a list of 100, there's three unknowns, rather than me having to like, constantly think about like, oh, chief is spelled wrong, fix the lookup table and kind of do that kind of process. The other thing that's really nice about it is that once you decide what the like functionality is, right? Like what the job functionality is, you can just tell Claude and Claude will update its memory or update the like memory, quote unquote. And then it will like do that moving forward. The other interesting part is edge cases, and this is the kind of thing that is very specific to your company and industry. Um, for me, a head of a department is probably director. If they're individual contributor, it's probably because they don't manage a team. It's just a fancy title. A founder is always a C-suite, a partner is always a C-suite. Consultants are always individual contributors, right? So you write these rules in like which your audience should be living in, and then you have Claude just execute on those rules. The one thing I've always found is that everybody disagrees about this. So getting this, like writing this out early on and then like kind of sticking to it and updating it as like a living document, it works a lot better than just like never talking about it ever. So the actual demo. So it's an actual CRM tool. I call it CRM tools in like Google Sheets, but it's a Google Apps Script extension. Um, I'll send everybody this Google spreadsheet. You can copy it. You won't use my API key. You will have to get your own API key, but you can just run it in Google Spreadsheets and it'll just work. So the first thing you'll do is just click, normalize titles. Um, okay, cool. Did it work? Yeah, all right. Hey, look, all of them came back unknown. That was not what was supposed to happen, right? Ugh. Haha, isn't that funny? A demo always goes bad, huh?
Thank you,
Uh,
AI.
yeah, I think I know what happened.
Is
Yeah,
this
okay, let's try it.
that text is the actual script, the stuff you were showing, that's the
Yeah,
actual what it's
yeah,
looking
this
at,
is the
right?
actual stuff that gets fed into Claude. So the way this works is just as from like an overview. The only thing that Claude has access to is job titles. Does not have access to company names, even though I've listed it here. It does not have access to email addresses, right? So this is very GDPR compliant, right? So you just literally just feed it a job title and then it would come back. So let's try this again. Normalize, 9 rows, still unknown. Okay, 1 second. Let me just go pull the original document. If you can see my screen, you can see all of my all of my code base here. CRM title organization, README tools, open Google Sheets. Nope. Title
Well,
rules. Go ahead.
I'll speak up. This is a problem that I have currently at times of bucketing names and trying to get all the right titles and the variations and all that stuff. Going back to a previous system I had years ago, it worked pretty well, but this is always an ongoing battle of keeping this data, making it usable for segmentation and just good audience information at the end.
Yeah, there's a bug. It worked this morning when I tried it. So give me 1 second. You're literally watching my brain work in real time. Normalize titles. There's an error, authentication error. Oh, I probably don't have the right API key in here. Okay. So let's change that. Sorry, friends. I've had to rotate my API key because I have a bunch of demos and like of how to do this. So I'm probably gonna have to go grab a new one, I think. Haha, you guys are all seeing my API keys. Don't steal them. If you do, they'll be gone before this is live. Copy key. Do. Wow, this was a lot more seamless. Where did the extensions, app scripts? All right. New API key. Save script properties. I think what I have to do is that, close that, nobody screenshot, that's post hog. And we'll do a refresh. I think I have to refresh the page for this to work. So give us 1 second.
And speaking of
And
AI, Tim, I just wanted to bust over to you, Tim, real quick. And you, at your convenience, would you launch that poll?
Yeah, it worked. Cool. So it
Okay.
worked, right? So I just needed to read refresh my script. So you'll notice that, like, obviously, right, like director of marketing, VP of sales, software engineers, and an individual contributor. I don't know if anybody else has these like goofy titles like growth hacker or growth ninja or growth specialist, or these like
Mhm.
very um tech startup-y kind of like um titles, but you'll notice that this one came back as unknown because Claude has no idea what it is.
Right.
So, as I said, head of XYZ is always a director, in my mind at least, unless they're not managing someone or a team of people. So it labeled head of product as director. So what we'll do now is like, okay, a growth hacker is probably an individual contributor, right? And a brand evangelist for problem being we will just call it an individual contributor. So instead of having to do, 10, I have to do two. But if you scale this up to 100, 1,000, 100,000, whatever it might be, you're going to see is that like a lot of you're not going to have to do a lot of this stuff. And it's very Claude is very smart in understanding like spelling mistakes. It's understanding the difference between CEO, CFO, CMO, right? One way to kind of make this like better, quote unquote. One of the things I've working on with someone was this idea that like, okay, they wanted to like rank, they wanted to have this like objective rank on their actual job titles. So a CEO is the rank of number one, a CMO is ranked number two because the CMO reports to the CEO. And so they had this idea of like ranking their C-suite executives on who they report to, and then like thinking about their like process that way. Agree, don't agree, not agree. Yeah, some people have different processes. So now I've added these two pieces in here, right? Growth hacker and brand evangelist. Now, if we go into my normalization roles, you'll notice for individual contributor, boop, 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 it has nothing, it doesn't say anything about a growth hacker, right? There's nothing here that says growth hacker. I know I
Right.
deleted it, but there's a reason why, right? Now, if I just come up here and just, update rules from corrections, Claude will now update itself. Do, 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 do.
And they became individual contributors. Yes.
Yeah, and then yeah, cool. And it's updated itself. It'll remove the yellow indication. And then if we go back to the individual contributors, doop, you'll notice that evangelist, brand evangelist, growth hacker are now like listed as individual contributors. So what'll happen now moving forward is if anybody has evangelist in their title, they will be labeled as an individual contributor, whether that's like HR evangelist, whatever it might be, they get bucketed into those places. Now, um, this really relies on you to fully describe who your audience is. And if you're not doing that, Claude will get it wrong. It's not Claude's fault that it got it wrong. It's don't mean to like judge anybody, but it's on you to like get that right at the beginning, right? Like it's not on the AI is not like making these like grand assumptions of like what somebody is or where they should get bucketed. You're just telling it to give some instructions. The other thing to note here is that um if we go into our extension, there's a lot of these like models, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Um,
And I have a related question coming in. Go ahead. Go ahead
Yeah,
with that.
so there's a lot of models, right? And for something like categorization, you don't want to use like the best model. You don't want to use Opus 4.6 or anything along those lines. You want to use a kind of a dumb model because it's just categorizing two things, right? It's like, is this a director? Yes. You don't need it to write out a full, plan to some extent. You just need it to categorize something. So this, if we look at like, we'll bring up my API keys again. So I ran those 10, right? On and it cost me 1 cent to run 10. I could do this another 100 times and it would cost, 10 cents. So you can kind of think about it in scaling it that way. The thing I would suggest is I did this for CRM titles, right? You could do this for a lot of stuff, right? You could do this for, hey, I have a company that I don't know what they do. Go do some research for me, Claude, and then come back with some like data points. You
Yeah.
can do it for things along those lines. And what my suggestion always is don't inherently trust it in saying that like, oh, it's 100% right. It's like trust and then verify,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's just like if you shout out to Gage if he's out there in the world. You would have to you just like a person you're managing, you have to like trust them and then verify that they like the thing that they did, right? It's you still have to do it. That's your job as like a manager, that's your job as a director, right? Is to like trust the people that work for you, but then also go back and verify because it's a lot easier to verify than it is to actually do the thing sometimes.
100%. And let me bust in with this question that Robin asked. So for the head of example, your
Mhm.
script says to use individual contributor if the context suggests they're a solo contributor with a fancy title. But if it is fed only job title, what is the extra context it could use to determine director versus individual contributor?
So since Claude has a bunch of training data already associated with it, it will use that context, right? So something like head of people is probably someone that manages people. Somebody like head software engineer is probably somebody that manages people. Head of product, the exact same thing, right? So it uses the context within inside of the training data it already has to derive those like, does this person manage or not manage someone? So like, I don't know, head of the household would be somewhat, it's like it's that kind of like very like almost simplistic kind of like categorization.
Makes sense. I battled with Chat GPT at the time for an entire afternoon and was at the same time impressed, a little disillusioned on both sides of it to try to do a particular data crunching thing. That was Chat GPT. That was months
Well,
ago. Things have come a long way, but I just
so
have to.
just a tag off on that. This idea originally started, so I'll give you like real background on it. This idea originally started when I was at AJ Media because we had a salesperson ask about like, how many are C-suites and like we just had all this like junk data. And then ChatGPT was still new at the time, and I was like, oh, I can just have ChatGPT do this. And it did like a 30%, like it had a 30% match rate. There was a lot of like unknowns and like misses. And again, this is 3, 4 years ago. The problem is that you couldn't teach, quote unquote, train ChatGPT at the time to kind of think independently of like independently. It's weird to like talk about this stuff like it's like a person, but think independently of like what is this thing actually asking of, right? So if it didn't actually like head of product is a great example, it would have not known what to do with that. There was no way to write edge cases back then. It was just like take this value, describe it into one of these 5 buckets. If you don't know what it is, put it into this unknown bucket. And so it was a 30% match rate because chief was spelled wrong and ChatGPT was like, well, it's not CEO or C-suite. So like so on and so forth. Yeah,
Makes
but
sense. Makes sense.
there's a lot you could do here. Like, and I'm just scratching the surface on some of the like some of the, like the really interesting stuff that like can be done. And even from like not just like a B2B media perspective, but just from like any business could like have a thing that sits in your inbox or sits in your database that like cleans a lot of this stuff up for you. Like a really good inbox one, right? Sorry, just as an example, there's a guy I follow. He runs, some e-commerce website, has a lot of like issues with Stripe and has a lot of issues with not a lot of issues, but has issues with Stripe, right? And so what he had done is just connect his email account for his business to Stripe and to Claude Cowork. And now every hour it just checks to make sure that, hey, is anybody asking for a refund? If somebody's asking for a refund, go look up their email address in Stripe, give me the details of what they purchased. Um, when did they make this purchase? So there's like these like logical steps that you as the person would do that you can offload into some of these AI agents, right? And so instead of sending an email or issuing a refund, it just notifies them, hey, this person's asking for a refund. Here's the details of their stuff. Here is a draft of the email. Can you take care of it from now on? And so like it's just this pass on, pass off kind of thing, which I think um, yeah, I don't know. I think there's just a lot of like use cases and applications that like I don't necessarily think people are like, really actually recognizing. I think a lot of the way people are trying to use it is like write this email for me, write, give me 16 more, ad variations. And I'm like, no, that's the fun part, right? The fun part is like writing the stuff, being creative is the fun part. The boring part is doing this, right? Having to categorize all these like job buckets.
100%. And I mean, I think, Kosti, this is a great example of like, I mean, I think you're a little more into the coding, but like Cam, I think earlier when we were talking, I mean, you had said something along the lines of, look, I'm not a coder. This is not what I do. I was able to use these tools and to get where I wanted to get. You envision the end goal and say, how can I get there? And now more and more AI is filling that gap.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many opportunities that we start to come across these things. I know I mean, how many times now we had a little poll about your favorite AI in there, see if you caught the fun one. But you know, there's so much of it now. I think our bosses and everybody is right to say, well, did you think about AI? You know, or how can you incorporate AI into the solution? So or how can you make your life easier? How can you do those things? I've used it in very rudimentary things, but I want to give time for. So thank you, Kosti, very much. As promised, into the weeds a bit there, but you know, we wanted to show that what the capabilities and the stuff that Kosti is doing. I want to get over to the wins here in a minute, so I'm going to go there. But we do have a question for Cam that I'm going to go back and read from Jim. But if you would, if you guys have wins, I'm going to give you the code word here in a couple of minutes. If you have a win that you would like to type into the chat, don't press enter, but go ahead and type any win into the chat that you'd like to be able to talk about, and we'll highlight you a little bit, and you can talk about it. Cam, this question you may be looking at it in the chat, but I'll read it for the group. This is from Jim? Is there an opportunity to overlay it with the desired attendees for related or company-owned events? For example, if you want purchasing managers to attend a niche purchasing event, how difficult is it to swap out the prioritization of different content, purchasing related content instead of the most engaged content? And then know who in your overall audience is engaged with those on like finance topics. Make them the best leads in your pool. So more about segmentation. Cam, I don't know, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I would say that's all work that for this, if we were to do something like that, it would have to be done. The data would have to be organized in a way, segmented in GA4, because that's where we're pulling from. It's totally possible. We actually just started when you ask about most engaged on finance topics, but most engaged on topics in general. We've been working with Leverage Labs. I'm sure some of us know Anne Marie here.
Sure.
They have gotten us that content scoring system for engagement to show us like what. So now we can see like if a record is more engaged with this topic of content or with this other topic. We didn't have that capability before. So I could see them rolling up into that solution if we were to segment it further like that. That's a good idea, though.
Thanks, Jim and Cam. I had tried to, and I still want to involve metadata from what the person looked at last to use to re-engage them with.
Yeah.
That gets really deep and tricky. But like I think it's being done in some cases right now. But that was something we looked into, but very tricky. All right, so folks, we've gone a while here. We've got about 9-10 minutes left. So I want to get to the wins here. If you have a win, your code word is Taco Bell. Please, if you have a win that you want to talk about today, I would love to see them. And they're flooding in. we got Joanne in there. One moment, Joanne. I do have a question before the entry, but we'll see if we get anybody else popping up. I think the win I've had this week, full disclosure, is working with a new employee named Marie that we were able to hire. So she's catching on quick, and that's been my win. That, and you know, when you spend time training folks, you're not doing your stuff, so you catch up on the weekend. You know, I don't know. Is that just me? Anyway, all right. Well, we have the one win from Joanne. Joanne, before you talk about your win, when is the last time you had Taco Bell?
Well, my daughter eats Taco Bell all the time and she leaves the bags in my car. So I feel like I've eaten Taco Bell on a weekly basis. And I'm working on her on like cleaning at least the bags out so I don't have to smell the Taco Bell when that is absolutely my answer for that.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I've
She's in college, by the way. So
well, okay, fantastic. We'll talk about what you want to talk about here.
So I really love this discussion and I love the idea of the segmentation. But one of the wins that we just had is we signed a new B2B client, media, of course, and we launched AI Augment and just in February, and we're already seeing proven results from some of our other clients. The AI tagging is a pain point for a lot of publishers because of aging taxonomies. The editors don't necessarily always have time to, put in meaningful tags. So we created an AI engine that literally reads all of the content and actually generates your keyword tags for you so that the editorial team, and it does keep your taxonomy if you have one in your CMS that's already defined. But what's really interesting, and this AI segment too, we have a segmentation that informs segments that you may never have thought about. But this client is now using our aggregated BI insights to see exactly what content keywords are most engaged, and then being able to identify sponsored products. Like, I'm going to develop a white paper. This is actually a true story with our ag client, where they saw crop protection as one of the keywords that they didn't have in their taxonomy. And then the salesperson actually sold a white paper. And so they're able to now go in and segment anybody's looking at crop protection, crop insurance, crop disease. They can be targeted specifically with the white paper. So I just think that's a huge win of like technology already making money. That's it.
I like it. Thank you. And thanks for the keeping it tight there. That's a good one, Joanne. So let's throw it out. We've got a few minutes left here. I don't want to just babble myself. Let's throw it out to the crowd and see, do we have questions? Like, I had asked for wins. We got the one. I understand it's Friday and people are listening. If you don't want to talk about a win or you don't have anything top of mind, but do you have a question you would love to ask this group, either Kosti, Cam, or the various smart people that are on this little call here? Don't everybody shout at once. All right.
If nobody has a question, can I actually like pose a question to the group?
Sure.
Yes,
Cool.
you can.
Okay, so cool. So I read a newsletter. It's about automating stuff. One of the things I've really come to realize is that like just automating things for transparency of like people having access to data. One of the things I've written about was kind of an off goof, just something I wrote about that was like just meant for me and my family to use. But I wrote about it because there was like some interest about it on the internet, so I posted about it. I got a bunch of engagement, a bunch of new subscribers. Though the problem with it is that like it's not really my target audience, right? There's this issue that I'm facing, right? Is that like I know if I double down on that content, I can grow that portion of the audience, but they're not necessarily as engaged as the like business operations portion behind it. So one of the things I'm running is just a test over the next 30 days of just trying to see which portion of the which audience is going to be like a winner to some extent, which is more engaged, which am I getting actual like more resources out of or more ideas to have things to automate from. Early testing is leading me to believe that this like lifestyle audience I have is not going to do well. Right? I don't really know. It's still first days. But I guess at what point like do I just go just like suck it up and go, I'm not writing about this anymore. Like this is like I can double down on an audience that actually like engages, that actually like has a lot more on-site presence. Like at what point would you guys at what point would the quorum here like cut this experiment off? I have a test for 30 days, but anyway,
Thoughts from our good marketers here.
crickets.
We're-
Love it.
It's a tough one though,
Okay.
Kosti. I mean that is tough. So you're saying the lifestyle content,
Yeah,
if you
so
will,
I write automations. One of them is like using Google Scripts and like Apple shortcuts to do stuff, right? So like we have a list of recipes every week. Me and my wife choose out 5 or 6 of them that we're gonna cook for this week, and then we choose them, and it goes into our reminders and go to the store and you buy all the stuff. That article led to a lot of people signing up. It's also led to a couple of the other like I go to the gym, log the workout. I come home from there's a lot of these just like I'm doing stuff to like make my life easier. There is a huge opportunity to grow that audience, but they're not as engaged, right? They haven't opened up any emails. There's a lot of like people that are signing up still to this day for it, but they're just not actively engaging with any of the welcome emails or any of the like subsequent like weekly emails afterwards. However, in a lot of the business operations portions, right, like connect Omeda to Slack, connect MailChimp to your email address, the CRM title normalization, company searches. That audience is a lot more engaged in terms of opening, clicking and stuff, but also going back to the site to actually like view and like understand what the process is about. So I have this like very weird problem where like I don't think it's weird, but like one audience will grow. The audience is going to grow slower, but they're a lot more engaged. So I don't know. I don't think I'm the only one that's ever had this problem, but if anybody has suggestions, would be great.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for the lifestyle, fun, quirky stuff. And whenever you show them that thing off to the side, that's like not necessarily your core, you get a bite on it. And I always love the idea of being able to surprise and delight somebody when they come to the website of like with some random content they didn't expect to see that day. I mean, your strength is going to be the automations and the geeky stuff, right? And I say that as a compliment. But like that's going to be your strength and kind of what you want them to pick up on. But uh,
Oh, hey,
Rob,
Kosi, so are you saying the issue is email, specifically email engagement? It's like the lifestyle people are
It's not
not.
even just email engagement. They come to the site, they get the thing that they want, right? This like process of like how to use your Google spreadsheets and shortcuts to do this thing for them, and then they just never engage again. And so I like build a bunch of stuff in the background to like make sure that I can see if they're engaging or not or back on the site. So I post more stuff on threads or whatever it might be. That's what the channel where all that engagement came from, but they're just not re-engaged. None of the subscribers are re-engaging with the website.
Do they feel like they got that first point, that first touch point, they got what they came for, and then they.
Yeah, and so that is the like crux here, right? Is that like it doesn't take long for me to like write or come up with those ideas to create that content. But there's a trade-off that if I'm spending the time doing that, I'm not spending the time in the audience that is actually coming back and re-engaging on the site. So there is this like and again, maybe I have to kind of eat it and just assume that like a percentage of the audience is just not going to re-engage no matter what. Um, so I don't know. I don't know. It's a
I think Bruce's comment, though, of, have you tried, maybe you might want to try a 90-day time frame. I think 30 is a little, maybe it needs a little more time. Bruce, I kind of
yeah,
agree
maybe.
with that one.
Yeah, maybe I'll bump it up to 90. The reason I was thinking 30 was because um like and this is just me. I feel like if you don't make that initial re-engagement connection in 30 days, it is way harder to make it 60 and 90 days later. Somebody that has engaged in the first 30 days of like signing up to a newsletter will probably be there for the longer run than somebody that doesn't engage for the first 60 days and then finally engages at day 63 or whatever it might be. Like so for me mentally, I'm like if I can chunk into 30 days or maybe the content isn't good enough. I don't know. Like I think this is a fun problem for me to figure out, but I just wanted to get some feedback.
I think you're right that shorter time frame makes sense, especially with the lifestyles thing, 'cause it's almost
Mm.
like you're engaged, you're going to use it, or you believe in it or not. I think we can stretch 90-day for B2B stuff. Like you're like, all right, you just get caught up with your job, but then you do need that problem comes back up, you need to solve it. Where's that automation's going to help me with my job title,
Okay.
normalizer? But I do think a shorter window is probably more the level for the lifestyle stuff.
Lifestyle.
Maybe
Yeah,
just attention span
yeah,
people.
and the thing I've come to realize is that like me, and again, like there is this like barrier to I'm trying to make everything very simply on both ends to be like click this button, get the whole thing, right? Um, rather than like what I would have done for some of the B2B stuff is like, here's how you actually build a server to like handle all these requests. Here's to like actually scale this up so you can like connect it to your backend database. Rather than doing that, it's just like, here's a Google Sheet so you can copy the Google Sheet, enter your API key, and then just kind of move on from there. So I think there's like, I'm trying to like lower the barrier to entry of like how easy it is to get this automation in. And so part of me was thinking about like, maybe that's one of the key indications here. The flip side, though, is the lifestyle audience has replied with a lot more ideas for automations than the business side has.
oh,
So there is
Hmm.
this. The problem though is that it's from a small, loud majority. So how can I make a decision, on 15 people? How can I make a
Hmm.
decision on 50 people, 15 people? So like there's a small majority that uh, does kind of like have this kind of work, So I don't know. I don't know. I will, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I will definitely be talking about this more often. Where did I learn how to do some of these automations, trial and error? My background, I used to be a designer. I learned how to design a bunch of stuff, and then I had a bunch of developers tell me that some of the stuff I was designing couldn't be done. So I learned how to write development to do some development stuff, really front end and back end. And then that led me to just go, there's a lot of these like automations that like I don't want to do in my like day-to-day life that I can just like do it. So like I just wrote code. Some of it's trial and error, some of it's just kind of really understanding like how the APIs work. For media automation I built to connect to Slack, a lot of it was trial and error, and I had to rely on a lot of Claude Code to kind of help me through that process because I like Omida. Their documentation is not great for their API. So that's all I'll say.
Documentation in general. Well, folks, we are coming up near the end here. We've actually got a few minutes over, but I really appreciate everybody's time. I want to, Tim, if you could please show the results of that poll, I would love it. Thank you. Wow, far and away. Nobody took the Skynet bite. Nobody, not one of you. Come on. All right. Okay.
Who said other? What other?
Gemini. I use Gemini.
Gemini. All right. Okay.
That wasn't on the list.
Yeah,
And
that should have
Copilot.
been.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should have been on the list. Oh, Perplexity was there twice. I thought I had Gemini. Okay, well, anyway, I appreciate you guys taking the poll, and although nobody took the Skynet bite. So
I'll be back.
I'll be back. Well, folks, so I really appreciate everybody's time today. And I think this was fun. Here's what we're going to do. We're looking at doing another of these in June or July. We got the big MACMA event we're warming up for, but June or July, I'll be reaching out to the people here and looking for additional topics and guest speakers. I think this was cool. This was really into the weeds in this case, but I loved it. And I think this is where we are anymore of doing these types of things. So I really appreciate everybody's time. And we showed the poll, so we're good there. I think unless there are any other last comments, I want to wish everybody a fantastic weekend. And a great Good Friday. So thank you all for your time. And Tim, you can stop that recording anytime. So
Thank you, Rick.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
It was
Thank you.
fantastic.
see you all. Thank you. Everybody have a great one. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.